First of all, I want to thank the whole U for really sponsoring this event tonight. When we thought about having a book launch and I reached out to the whole U, they go, wow, if you make it virtual, we can support you and really get it out in the community. And for those of you who don't know, the whole U is celebrating their 10th anniversary. And I'm even looking around this building, and they have done so much to promote wellness, not just for our patients, but for our staff. So we're really excited that we're able to be a part of this program. And as Hannah mentioned, I am a dietitian. I'm also a health educator. I've had the privilege to be on staff at University of Washington for over 20 years, and also I'm a faculty member in the nutrition program where I've been teaching for about the last 13 years. And Angela and I actually met at the university. And if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Angela Thayer. I have spent most of my career practicing in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And then I more recently expanded into lifestyle medicine. I've actually been practicing a holistic style of lifestyle medicine my whole career as a complement to the traditional style of medicine that we practice. And then I also more recently went to a culinary school online and was trained as a plant-based chef to really help solidify the foundations and culinary techniques, because when we talk in our book about culinary medicine and kind of improving your skills to make food taste really good, that I thought that would enhance the experience for our patients as well.
Angela kept busy during COVID.
I did.
She was getting triple board certified and all kinds of good things. So anyways, how our paths met was quite a few years ago. We did both work at the University of Washington. And I was working with a number of women with diagnoses such as polycystic ovarian syndrome, and they were really struggling to have regular cycles and to get pregnant. I had to go across to the next building and meet the reproductive endocrinologist. And Angela had such an interest in lifestyle that we started collaborating on patients. And then fast forward, I opened a private practice in addition to my UW position. Angela helped start a major fertility clinic.
Yep.
And we collaborated on a lot of patient care. And we got this idea, we're working with these women one-on-one. What if we had some classes? So I took out my health educator hat. There was no template. No one else was doing this. We used the break room. And literally on Saturday mornings, I was bringing over the food. And instead of just telling people, oh, go eat healthy, get healthy, we wanted to teach them how to do that. We wanted to do the hands-on. So if we were talking about healthy greens and how to get folate in your diet, we actually were massaging kale, right? And that's in our cookbook, in our book. How to make a lovely massage kale salad. We were cooking soups. And so all of a sudden, these women felt so much more confident in their skills. And what did we see after 6 weeks? What kind of changes did we find? This is why we wrote this book.
Well, initially we started, of a more traditional type of study design where we would measure labs before and after and things like that. And we saw changes in metabolic parameters. And then we also saw the biggest thing, we saw women who maybe had polycystic ovary syndrome, they were starting to cycle more regularly. And we saw women getting pregnant and women who were going through processes like IVF, which is kind of the culmination of any fertility treatment, were making better embryos, better quality, having more make blastocysts and having higher pregnancy rates and fewer miscarriages. So we're like, whoa, this is really, really working. And I think, that information about foods and diets, people are familiar with Mediterranean style diets. A lot of people might know that's kind of a good diet to follow when you're trying to get pregnant. But the problem is it's more than just the information, right? It's not like, okay, here's information. It's realizing people have to find some internal motivation to say, hey, maybe I should do some things here, set some SMART goals, kind of have some achievable goals and accountability to help themselves. And then finally, it's the confidence. And so that comes from, if people haven't had a lot of experience in the kitchen, skill building and learning to make food delicious, especially when we're talking about vegetables or whole grains or legumes like beans and lentils and soy, because we really people are driven by taste. And so if food isn't tasting as good as what they're used to, they're not going to form new habits and integrate these foods. We really wanted to emphasize how to spice things and use good cooking techniques to make everything taste really good. So they're like, oh yeah, I'm not missing anything. This is delicious. Their partners would start tasting the food and really enjoying it. And we know what we're providing are nutrient-dense foods that are really going to enhance fertility.
Absolutely. And we kept collecting stories as we went on. Angela was a medical director. I was running the classes. And we kept saying, we have to write a book. Because when we would present this information and no one else was doing it yet, at fertility conferences, at our nutrition conferences, people were like, is there like a really great book you would recommend to your patients? And we're like, And at first, we kind of thought it would be a cookbook. We take the favorite recipes and the stories, but we weren't just talking about food. We were talking about health. We were talking about make sure you're getting adequate sleep. In our classes, we would actually take a walk together in the group. And for a lot of women, they're like, wow, I never really thought I liked just a 30-minute walk. Could be really pleasurable with a friend. So we started to walk. We worked on stress. We brought in yoga instructors, really, really looking at the whole lifestyle. So when we came up with the idea of writing a book, we're like, let's take the whole class and see how we can make it more accessible. Instead of 12 women at a time, we could reach thousands, I hope hundreds of thousands of women and men that would really benefit, because we know that the plan is helpful. We said the worst side effect could be that you feel better, right? That, and when we would ask the women at the end of the class and we do evaluations, I remember one of our last live classes before COVID, we had this group of 4, and none of them were really breakfast, lunch eaters. They had coffee, but they would eat together, right? We would cook, make delicious things. So they would try them all and cook them in the morning. And they go, I started eating in the morning. And everyone at that table started to cycle. They had irregular cycles, and they all went on to get pregnant and build their families. And that's just like one small group. And we were seeing this over and over again, which is why we include stories, and we're going to read some of those tonight.
Right. And the thing that we found really important is people want to know that this is evidence-based. So some of the original studies came out in 2007, that what was called the fertility diet, which was based on observational studies of about 17,000 nurses. And it looked at how are they getting pregnant and what patterns of eating are they following, or exercise. And so there were, basically 10 early bullet points that linked this holistic kind of style of, oh yeah, food and movement really does help fertility. And then that went on later. There were more studies, similar studies, showing a plant-heavy diet with more legumes, more grains, more vegetables, soy, lower in red meat and trans fats, and higher in like olive oil, right? So some of these healthy fats were really helping women get pregnant. And then more recently, there was the Earth study, which was a reproduction study looking at some environmental factors, which looked at a subgroup of 357 couples that were doing IVF. And they found similar things, like all of the same tenets held: more soy, more plants, more plant-based protein, fish. All of these things showed higher pregnancy rates with IVF. And they thought, it really is probably due to some basic cellular repair and health at the level of the mitochondria, at the level of the egg, and the level of the sperm. And in some other studies, that's exactly what we've seen. So now you can see the observational data. And then the how is what we also go into our book, is like, how do these foods help? What is each food group doing, and why are they so important?
Right. And I think it's, we've known for a long time in medicine that nutrition is really important for pregnancy. But we also have a lot of research on the first 1,000 days, which is 3 months before conception. So our book is really for folks that are struggling with fertility. They're having a hard time to conceive, but also for people that are planning a pregnancy. And they really, what we're trying to say, if you start that foundation, hopefully at least 3 months in advance, you actually are going to have a very positive impact on the next generation to have the healthiest pregnancy. And the US dietary guidelines and the DGAs have shown that women and men are sorely short in servings of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. They're getting plenty of protein. I know there's a lot of buzz on protein, but they're really short in these important nutrients. So things like, you know, having greens every day is going to be a great source of folate. That's really important both for fertility and for the early stages of conception. And so we really wanted to walk through people through this book. We give some of the science, some of the studies. I don't know, we have what, over 300 references, lots of references. Because quite honestly, when we had fertility docs, OBGYNs, and dietitians review our manuscripts, they all said, wow, I learned a lot.
Yeah, this is great, right? And they want to be able to recommend it to their friends and patients and everybody else as well. So we felt really good that the book is solid in evidence and providing the absolutely latest information we could about what we know about the connection between food and other lifestyle habits and fertility.
Right. So we're hoping out in the audience and, you know, some of our readers are going to be healthcare professionals who work with folks who are building families so they can share some of this knowledge with them in a really easy way. And we wanted the information to be accessible. We wanted someone to be able to get it out of the library or on their Kindle or on their audio, that in a really easy, non-threatening way, they could get great information. I've actually listened to it. It sounds great.
Oh, good. Yeah, the thing we know about diet is dietary choices are personal and they're cultural and they are long-standing and they're ingrained. And so, you know, if you're somebody who doesn't eat a lot of vegetables or you're time pressed, which most people are, and they're going for some convenience foods, to try and get these other vegetables in does take a little extra time and effort. And we always emphasize, you know, one of the things people ask us frequently is, you know, how important is organic? And we say, gosh, we always say organic can be good because obviously there can be fewer pesticides, but there's pesticide residue on organic vegetables. We really prefer to talk about eating locally and seasonally grown vegetables, right? Because fruits and vegetables that are local and seasonal haven't been transported as far. They're going to contain many more nutrients and they're going to taste better because they're fresh. So if you have the opportunity to shop in, you know, 2 or 3 seasons, or you can go to farmers markets or even your local market might be getting fresher, more local ingredients than something shipped in, it's going to be better for your health and taste better.
And don't forget, frozen fruits and vegetables are okay. I love berries. There's nothing wrong with getting berries that have been picked when they're in season, actually at the peak of season, and they're frozen right away. So you might see a recipe in our book that calls for berries and you're like, oh, it's winter, or orange, and we talk about substituting, right? For like a massage kale salad, you could do strawberries, you could do blueberries, you could do pomegranates, use what's in season, use what's available. So we wanted things to be affordable. And as we go through the chapters and we explain and we talk about protein, right now, probably for most people, the most expensive thing in the grocery cart is animal proteins. The price of chicken, the price of beef. We're not saying you have to cut it out because we love fish and sometimes that can be a higher price item. But when you're adding in more plant protein sources, the price of high quality tofu, lentils, legumes, pulses really bring down your grocery bill. And they're affordable, they're sustainable. And, you know, we could go on about sustainability, but that does help. And we never tell someone that they have to give away. They have to give up their favorite foods, right?
Right. It's just that all of the data we have thus far, all the observational data shows that the plant-based proteins really have higher links with higher fertility rates and lower rates of diabetes and heart disease, cardiovascular disease in the future. The one exception on the animal proteins that has been shown in the positive column is fish. And a lot of people aren't eating much fish. That seems to be the one that they're not as comfortable cooking at home. So we do talk about how to cook the fatty fish and how to try to incorporate that into your diet if you're interested in getting those omega-3s And if you are purely plant-based, we talk about how to add in omega-3s from other sources, right? Nuts. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Angela, I was wondering, because you always share our 3 bullets so well. I
Yeah.
think that's such a good starting point. Just in case my mom is listening, I remember when I started 18 years ago, and she said, "What the heck does food have to do with fertility?" And thank goodness Jorge Chavarro, our friend and colleague from Harvard, just came out with a book, and it was on Time Magazine. I was like holding it up in my office, and yeah, it does have a lot.
Right.
But we want to break down a little bit to the beginning of those
Sure.
3 important points.
Yeah. So we can talk about those 3 tenets. And so the first one is really that we talk about strengthening your foundation is antioxidants. And so antioxidants really help combat oxidative stress that is accumulating with age and with lifestyle choices. So having a sedentary lifestyle, working in front of a computer all day, having alcohol, not sleeping well, having higher stress, all these things can actually cause oxidative stress in the cells. Also, high sugar can overwhelm the mitochondria and cause more stress. So antioxidants from foods really can help offset that and mitigate some of that stress and damage. And so those basically, when we're talking about that, colors of the rainbow, fruits and vegetables, and fish. So that's really the first tenet, is get those in. And we talk about even more than 5 servings a day, because we want optimal fertility. So a lot of the best diets really talk about more like 7 to 8 servings a day. And that means putting these foods in like at breakfast, right? You don't want to wait till dinner. We've talked about that.
Early, right?
Yeah, start early.
Put it in
getting
your
these
omelet.
in.
We have a great garden frittata. So when you talk about antioxidants, I love to hear about, let's get down to the sperm and the egg.
Yeah.
Because we need those. How could those antioxidants help them?
Well, so within the egg, the egg is the workhorse, right? So it's going to be responsible, once the sperm drops off its little bundle of DNA, the fertilized egg is going to start all the cell division. And if it has good energy and less stress, it's going to be able to go through those processes of cell division without errors. Because errors are the main reason why cells stop growing or growing correctly. So, and with sperm, it really helps sperm motility. So if the sperm have good energy from the mitochondria, they're going to swim really well. They're going to reach the egg. They're going to be better formed. And we know certainly, again, with aging, that oxidative stress accumulates in sperm, and so older men tend to have sperm that's not as good. And so again, adding these in can help offset.
And women often ask, and there's a lot of buzz on social media, how do I improve the quality of my eggs?
Right.
Because we're born with all of our eggs. We can't make more. We have them. So how would those antioxidants help our eggs?
Well, I think just by putting them in the best shape possible at the very beginning, we talk about food being the primary source to get all those antioxidants, right, as opposed to supplements. There are a lot of people who feel like, oh, I'm taking an antioxidant vitamin or supplement. And that may help. They're not as regulated, and it's not food. So you can't really get too much food, right? You're not going to get too much broccoli or blueberries or anything like that. You're not going to eat 3 apples probably.
Your body can process it,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So then while that egg is getting ready, the follicular fluid, while it's developing, can really be positively impacted, right?
Oh, absolutely. Within the follicle, that is during the 90 days that the egg is developing, the granulosa cells in the follicle are supporting that microenvironment. Everything that's occurring in the 90 days prior to the ovulation or egg collection is so critical to that health of that egg and how it's going to do. So
it's probably that 3 months before that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
And that's a little less time for new sperm to be developed.
Yeah.
And we like to, we don't maybe think this is just for women. Everything is very appropriate for men. Same thing with antioxidants for food. So men are making new sperm. So sometimes, 35, 40% of infertility is due to male factor issue.
Right.
And so we talk about men's sperm being a reflection of their health. So if we're just working with the female, we want to know about the partner or the sperm donor. We want to know, do they have chronic disease? Do they have type 2 diabetes? And that everything that she's eating, he needs to be including too, even just nuts, so that during that, while he is developing new sperm, he's got a chance at really improving their health.
Right. So we talk about, kind of a 90-day window for women, and more like for the egg development, and probably like a 70-day window, for sperm development. And so they're pretty close, but basically, you want to, in that time prior to conception and pursuing something like IVF, you really want to have optimal diet, exercise, trying to get good sleep, cutting alcohol out, cutting out, tobacco or marijuana,
So
cannabis.
adding it, so we have our number one. I want to go back to that because I think it's about our antioxidants. We've talked about how those come from fruits, vegetables, whole grains. And then next, can you tell us a little bit about how can we make our lifestyle more anti-inflammatory? And let's bring in the gut. We love the gut. Yes.
So the gut is big, so everybody is now focusing on the gut and how it influences so much of our health, with all of the trillions of microbes that are living there, we're symbiotic with them. And so they need fiber, right? So fiber is kind of the new buzzword that everybody has to think about. And fiber is only coming from plants. It's not coming from any animal products. And so that's another reason why, if you can get enough fiber into your diet, it's going to keep those microbes in your microbiome really happy and healthy. And then you're going to have a strong barrier. You're going to have better hormones. So there's so many hormones secreted in our gut, right? But in situations where sometimes women will not have the healthiest gut or more chronic inflammation, you can get some estrogen leakage back, and then that can cause, an estrogen dominant kind of cycle that isn't as helpful. So it's important to strengthen the gut through fiber. And so the main sources of fiber, anything plant-based.
Absolutely.
So,
And one of the fun things is people will tell us, like, well, now that, most Americans get maybe 12 grams, and we're saying let's get over 25, is that people like, wow, I'm going to the bathroom regularly, and I feel good. I mean, I'm really seeing a difference, and that actually even helps our immune system in a lot of other areas. So the anti-inflammatory, we know that part is really, really helpful. And I'll just mention the third bullet, which is kind of a more low glycemic. So our food fertility plan is lower glycemic. And two of the main diagnoses that people have with fertility issues for women are polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis, which tend to be more, inflammatory. But there's a lot of negative impact from insulin resistance. So when we help to make someone's intake or their diet more lower glycemic, by having more fiber, by putting this all together. So I think where a lot of the misinformation, or myth, whatever you want to call it, is a lot of people are hearing, well, I have to cut out carbs and no carbs. And we're like, whoa, no, you want carbs. Those are your energy foods. So what we talk about in our book, I know we call them great grains or something in that chapter, we really talk about, hey, let's try recipes with ancient grains, easy things like quinoa, farro, and people raved about it when they make farro for the first time. They're like, this is so much more interesting than white rice. Trying different grains, having more beans. These foods are more filling, they're more satisfying, they are packed with minerals. So if you follow a lot of myths that are out there, cut out gluten, cut out grains, cut out carb, you just cut out so many micronutrients, macronutrients that support fertility. So think about it. If you're eating foods and the meals we're recommending are really more balanced to keep blood sugars more regulated, people feel fuller. I hate to say this, sometimes I call barley and beans nature's Ozempic, because really what they do is the same thing. They're a slower blood sugar rise. They're filling, they're more satisfying, they lower your lipids, they help fertility. And I've had some people read our book and they go, Judy, isn't this just a book for good health and nutrition for everyone? I go, yes, it really is. It truly is. But because if you manage chronic disease, we have better fertility.
That's right.
And we don't want people to be undernourished. And we have one story, April, in our book, who really She was told she had poor egg quality, but finally someone said, oh, you're not eating enough, you're starving yourself.
Right.
And so really her whole reproductive access shut down. You need that adequate nourishment.
And one thing I'll just add on that is when we talk about lower glycemic, we're talking about the fiber within the whole food. So it's really a whole food diet. Any food that's been processed, so there's processed and ultra processed, right? So processed grains are just a huge part of the American diet. So and then they enrich them. They've removed the fiber and the nutrients, and then they enrich them by adding in some vitamins, but it's not the same as the whole grain. And so those enriched grains, which might be, grocery store bread, pasta, cereals, crackers, cookies, anything like that, are going to just rapidly turn to sugar in your body, have that rapid rise in glucose and insulin. So that's why we emphasize so much of the whole foods, whole fruit, whole grains, rather than juices or processed grains, to really not overwhelm the mitochondria, have the cells work better, lower the insulin resistance, decrease inflammation, et cetera. So it all ties together.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and share a story. That's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share Olivia's story, who was actually in our classes, and she was a patient of both of ours. And of course, we have permission. All these women wanted to share their stories. We had more than we could put in. But at 27 years old and recently married, Olivia was already thinking about trying to conceive, but was worried because stress from her job at a high-tech company. She had started skipping every other cycle. She'd also put on 10 pounds in the last 4 months, even though she thought she was eating well. A month after her wedding, she decided to go to a fertility clinic for an evaluation. Her friend thought she was nuts for going to a fertility clinic when she was so young, and she hadn't been trying to conceive for very long. They thought that a fertility clinic was a place to go only when you needed IVF, but Olivia ignored them. She wanted to take charge and reverse the trend she'd been seeing. Her history and blood tests supported a diagnosis of polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. Her doctor, I believe that was Angela Thayer, her doctor encouraged lifestyle changes and offered medications to help with ovulation. She wanted to, this is a doctor before you, she wanted to try a natural approach first. She quit her high-stress job because she felt it was hurting her health, and she began consulting work instead. The flexible schedule gave her more time to shop and cook, attend regular exercise classes. With her diet, she started off doing what she read online, and she went on a low-carb diet and counted calories, and she quickly lost some weight, felt great, but then she hit a plateau. Calorie counting was not her thing. After about 6 months, she entered our Food for Fertility class, where she learned how to eat for fertility instead of weight loss. She learned that she did not need to be afraid of whole grains or fruits, and she began adding these food groups back into her diet. She lost another 5 pounds during the class after she stopped counting calories and started eating more carbohydrates. Whereas before, Olivia said she and her husband might eat a handful of vegetables, now they cook twice as much. Instead of 1 bag of Brussels sprouts, she'd cook 2. They made sure that half of the volume of the food on their plates was vegetables. She always made sure to include some leafy greens and different varieties of nuts, and they would have a piece of fruit after dinner for something sweet. She said she had more energy, her skin cleared up, and she was sleeping better. I felt so much better, Olivia recalled. I just thought that I was a lethargic person, but I felt like a different human. Her cycles began to change more regular. Instead of every other month, they shortened to 35 days. 3 months later, her husband James said that Olivia looked a little different and wanted her to take a pregnancy test. She was a little hesitant because she didn't want to ruin her day with another negative pregnancy test, but she agreed to take it. 2 lines showed up right away. She was in shock. All of her hard work paid off. She went on to have a healthy baby, and she conceived naturally 2 more times with sticking with her healthy habits. And I hear from her since then, and she's like, Judy, my kids love vegetables. And this is what's so important. Right. We want to plant the seed that you're not just helping your health and your fertility and your pregnancy, this goes on to the next generation. Yes. And PCOS can be genetic. And so making changes in utero and lifestyle and what you offer to your children can really make a difference. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely. So yeah, what you're eating pre-conception and during your pregnancy, it's all a continuum, right? So you don't have to change your diet once you're pregnant. You can continue with the same approach. And we tried to keep the approach really simple. So when we talked to people trying to get pregnant, women and men, and we talk about just kind of a visual aid we talked about was the fertility plate, right? So we talked about if you're thinking about how to craft your meals, make half of your plate the vegetables, fruits and vegetables, a quarter the healthy proteins, and a quarter the whole grains.
That's your starting point,
That's
right?
your starting point. Some healthy fats. Whole dairy is optional, you know, to add in, but whole fat was better than low fat for people who tend to have anovulatory cycles. But we kind of just use those visual aids. And then when we would do our cooking and our recipes, we really discourage calorie counting. We discourage counting any real macronutrients. We just talked about some basic principles. The recipes don't even include broken down nutrition information or calories because we don't want people to focus on numbers. We want people to focus on whole foods.
Right. And something we do in class and we talk about in the book is we talk about learning to be an intuitive eater and a competent eater, because sometimes before your cycle, you are a little hungrier, and that's okay. You know, nourish your body. And I think one of the things that we bring out is you have these foundational foods. If you like leftover dinner for breakfast, that's okay. Actually, I tell people that's pretty simple. If you like something that you've got some leftover roasted veggies and you want to just make a quick omelet, you know, that's a great way to get more, you know, vegetables in. So we really tried to come up with things that were practical. It's like we have a smoothie, right? Where we have fruit. We have, like, you could do bananas or blueberries. We have a nut butter in it. We throw some green leaves. You can use whole milk or plant milk or yogurt and some chia seeds. So we kind of have almost all the food groups in it.
Yeah.
Oh, oats, we put some oats in it too. And you don't have to buy these ultra processed collagen proteins that have no data that they support fertility or make your skin better, you know, that you can use real foods as a way to make your own smoothie or make your own chia pudding. But we don't discourage people who are really starting from everything came out of a box or everything was eating out. Maybe their first step, I've worked with couples that really eat out every meal. And they're like, please don't judge me. I'm like, that's okay. And we worked on, hey, at that place, when you're at H Mart or you're at the Whole Foods food court or whatever, this is what they have.
Right.
Get some more vegetables. And I've had like 3 couples in the last year exactly like that. Like, we're not into the cooking. What can we do?
Right.
And 2 of the couples were waiting to do IVF, conceived on their own. What was different? More antioxidants, more anti-inflammatory. And then they come back when they're pregnant. They're like, yeah, we need to eat at home a little bit more, you know, help us out. But they felt like not being judged, and we would never judge anyone. You know, and when Angela talked about ultra processed, minimally processed, okay, most of us aren't making our bread from scratch. It's really nice if you do.
Maybe during COVID.
Maybe during COVID, people were making
Right.
sourdough. But there's a difference between minimally processed, where you can buy, there's even meal delivery services. And for some people, that's a starting point.
Oh, absolutely.
They get a meal kit and they learn how to cook from it, or it comes all balanced and it's real food. What we're trying to trend away from is, you know, ultra processed foods that when you look at that, there's very little whole food in it. And it's usually higher in sugar and salt and fat to increase the palatability and the quick energy. And we're not saying you can never have those things. Everybody has their little favorites, but there's so many things that you can easily put together. And so can you share a little bit? We have culinary tips, we have recipes. What do we do in our food chapters that you think is really special?
Well, so I was going to say, yeah, the culinary tips are key. So these basic, super practical, like meeting people where they are and understanding everybody's going to be starting from a different point and saying, just make a small step. And so that at the end of each chapter, there's kind of takeaways, suggested SMART goals, but we want people to set up their own kind of goals or plan of action. And at the end, we have a 6-week blueprint, which suggests how to just gradually make small changes. And you can take 6 weeks or 12 weeks or however long you want to just try to nudge some of these other foods into your diet that are more nutritious to support your foundational sperm and eggs, the basic building blocks that you need for good embryo development. And so that's the key with that. And then the culinary tips are like, if you don't have a lot of cooking skills, which a lot of people didn't grow up cooking, and they might not have learned a lot of cooking skills as an adult, we talk about that. We talk about basic knife skills, which now you can watch, plenty of YouTube videos, how to plan your meals. That was such a big thing that was so helpful to people to think like, oh yeah, I should plan things out. And then I've got to plan for 3 days, prep some food, and then batch cook. So cook a couple of things that can serve as leftovers or future frozen meals that are quick and easy. And we try to, everybody has time pressure. So we want to make sure we're talking about time and budget and paying attention to these really practical things to just say, add a little bit more of this or that, the things that your diet might be missing. And hopefully that'll kind of crowd out some of the other foods that aren't providing the same degree of nutrition.
Right. And you'll see there's things like bowls, like one of my favorites is like a sweet potato lentil bowl, that we give you the basics, but you may want to add some different vegetables. You might not like kale, you want to do spinach or broccoli. That's okay. We put the time in, we put in if it's vegetarian or diet or dairy-free or gluten-free for those who need that. But we decided we're going to leave out the numbers because maybe you like more tahini sauce on it, that's okay. To really kind of own it. The sheet pan recipes have been really nice. So a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm getting 2 meals. Or if we have someone who's single, I'm getting, a couple of dinners, a couple of lunches. That's a little bit more, practical for me.
Right. And we talk about, when you're cooking at home, your ingredients are just going to be better than probably what they're using in most restaurants. So we talk about salting. I talk about salting for flavor while you're cooking. We talk about adding sugar or natural honey or something like that when you're making maybe a salad dressing. A little bit of salt and sugar at home is going to be much less than processed foods are adding. And so you don't need to, you really can use that because you want your foods at home to taste good. And that's the secret of restaurants. They're pouring some of this stuff in, and you can do it and use less and have more nutritious foods.
Would you like to read your story?
I wanted to read Katie's story.
Great.
Okay, so this one's a little shorter, I think.
Okay.
But Katie had a long and complex fertility story, which is not uncommon for women to experience this kind of arduous journey. I've never been the skinny one, and I'm fine with that. But it's always been hard to hear that my weight might be the reason I couldn't conceive. She became tearful at this point in our conversation. I thought because I wasn't losing weight and I wasn't gaining weight that everything was fine. I didn't know that nutrition could have such a strong effect. Hearing that was difficult because you don't get told that very often. I would have focused a lot earlier if I had any idea that it had anything to do with fertility. We were very much a meat and potatoes or meat and rice family, and I always felt tired and heavy after eating, so I started making less. I make extra vegetables instead. We used to just eat carrots, corn, and potatoes, but now we eat spinach, green beans, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, and butternut squash. I made a frittata this weekend with bacon and cheese, but I added spinach. It was delicious. I never would have had spinach in my fridge before. When I go to the farmer's market, I know what a lot more of the stuff is. It was during a break from fertility treatments that Katie and her husband spontaneously conceived. We were trying to figure out how we could afford IVF, and my brain was on overload. Having a mental break really helped. I spent a lot more time on self-care. I was doing acupuncture too, and I did a lot more for myself. Now her baby's almost 1. Everything she learned in the class was incredibly helpful to have a healthy pregnancy because she made so many changes to her diet and lifestyle, including the protein flip and swap and adding more vegetables.
And I think that's so important, as there's, and I don't want to get too much into this, but there is a lot of weight bias in the medical world. And honestly, in the beginning, the patients that we sent to us were all the larger women. Because they go lose weight, go lose weight. Well, sure, if there's lifestyle changes with nutrition and with movement, Sure, those women are probably going to use some of their visceral fat, and that helps, to help ovulate. But we really found that, what, it really didn't matter the weight. It's just working on the health. And so we're like, no, this class is great for everyone. We screen them, and I got to meet them and all. I just wanted to read this one really quick, this little mini one from one of our classes, and then we're going to see if take some questions. But I love this one because it's talking about men, and I remember this patient. My husband had some sideways swimming sperm. So I had their sperm analysis. So we applied the learnings you taught us about male fertility. He ate a lot of kale, spinach, anthocyanin containing, they learned the antioxidant, berries, then beans, nuts, zinc containing, oyster, walnuts, and more, and improved his semen analysis. After 3 months, we conceived naturally without IUI. So, so often the pressure's on the woman, like, oh, you have PCOS, you have endometriosis. Hey, no matter what, we want this guy. He's half the equation to getting pregnant. Sure. So I love that, they're like, he joined in, and that was really helpful, and that was really great. Yeah. So are there some questions that we would like to get to? Otherwise, we have some more things we can chat on. And
yes, feel free to either unmute yourselves or drop them in the chat or the Q&A. I'm happy to relay them up to anyone that has a question.
Yeah. So Judy, what do you think about the nutrition spotlights? What can you say about some of those that are in the book?
I think they're great. We just wanted to we didn't want to go on and on about vitamin B12 or vitamin D, but we really just wanted to share what was a highlight. Where did you get, where does the vitamin come from in food? And how could it help support fertility? And I think that made it kind of easier to digest for people, that was a lot helpful. And then we have those little boxes that show you like, oh, the beans, look at how much fiber they have. If we're asking someone to eat 25 grams of fiber, it was kind of nice to know like, wow, lentils and beans, or I always love to tell patients that a cup of raspberries is 8 grams of fiber. One of my favorite things.
Right. What about iron? Like, where can people get iron from plants?
Right. So greens and beans, I tell you, they are the winners for so many nutrients, folate. So I tell people, if you're on a desert island and you only have 2 foods, ask for some greens and beans and maybe just a little olive oil, seed your nuts for the fat, to help with some of the absorption. But so green leafy vegetables are great sources of iron. So are lentils, so are beans. You get a little bit from your whole grains. So again, those are all really, really helpful. And I think that one of the biggest food groups is the pulses, is the lentils and beans. And when we start to show people how versatile those are, they're just like, wow, you could do so much with them.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We had some questions roll in. Would you talk a little bit about recipe development?
Sure.
I tell you, recipe development is so much fun. And Angela and I are foodies. So we went out in the community a lot. We went to a lot of different cooking programs, right?
We did cooking classes. We read a bunch of cookbooks from all over. We emphasize global cuisine because we're really trying to expand the classic American diet.
Yes.
But we would try things, and then we would basically add what we wanted to add to change the recipes around and spice them up and make them the best we could for fertility. So it was just a process and trial and error.
And a lot of times when we were doing the classes live, which we did for the first 10 years, we would sometimes make 4 or 5 dishes. We were very ambitious.
Yeah.
We broke them up into groups, had it ready for them to prep. And truth be told, there are times a recipe just looked good. And I said, okay, let's try it. I'm gonna be really honest. So many graduate students helped us with these classes. One of the early ones were both Carrie Dennett and Andrea Lopriori, in case they're listening. And I remember when I told Andrea Lopriori, we're gonna do a lot of kale for greens. She goes, these are tried and true. And she got us going on the massage kale salad. I'd never made that before in my life. I came up with the lentil kale soup. I really think it's our love of food, and then really thinking seasonal. So if the class was taught in the fall, we would do more of the like winter squashes, things like that, what was in season. And then we went to virtual. Oh my gosh, Angela would never let me repeat a recipe. She said, no, we have to have new recipes. We have to keep coming up with new recipes. So we would practice them at home, especially we did a lot during COVID, a lot of practice. And then when we flipped, oh my gosh, it's really different when people are cooking in their home kitchen. We have less control. We didn't buy the food. And almost every time somebody would buy a different ingredient. So on the fly, we'd be like, oh, Judy, Angela, we bought a different thing. How can we make that work? And we were able to do it, remember?
I mean, we want people to have an intuitive sense of cooking and not always have to work from recipes. So we tried to keep the recipes pretty simple, but share some spice combinations, and so people could experiment. We really want people to experiment with foods and spices, and then kind of develop their own core of what they really like for their personal recipes.
The first time we went virtual, I actually sent everyone, this is the beginning of COVID, no one knew what to expect. I sent them all spice packets of za'atar because I wanted them to try it. And we had like some people in Alaska, and I had no idea if they could get za'atar. So so I think the recipe development was input from our patients. We went to a lot of different cooking classes and different, all over Seattle over the years. Great.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for that. The next question is, the importance of sleep was mentioned a few times. Do you have any recommendations for patients whose cycles are affected by irregular sleep, but due to their work environment, they frequently flip from day shifts to night shifts?
Yeah, that is one of the hardest situations, I would say, is if your work schedule is a swing shift or a night shift and you're not following a normal circadian rhythm with normal light and day light schedules with the sun. I think you just make the best of what you can with getting your sleep on a regular basis and try and get those big solid chunks when you can, and because I know some people have those schedules, and those are definitely some of the hardest that have shown to disrupt cycles, and they just cause an overall body stress. So there are sleep medicine clinics now, and so paying attention to how you treat your off time or your day in preparation for sleep, paying attention to things like caffeine and alcohol and screen time, and trying to have a wind down period before you go to your sleep cycle and have blackout shades, things like that. Really doing the best you can with that kind of shift work.
I've seen so many women trying to conceive, PCOS night nurses that flip and flip and flip. And sometimes if it's really hard, they've been able to work with their employer and just ask for a steady shift for a number of months. Can I just do, all nights, or can I do 3 together? And sometimes they're able to make some of those changes in their work, but it's hardest. I also find that the people who do a lot of night shift are often undernourished. And so I really find it's really helpful. Like sometimes they just want to come home and go to sleep. And we talk about what they could pack and eat or drink on their way home so they're well nourished. And that's the other thing I find that helps with cycling too. But reach out for help for your healthcare team if that's your situation, because I think that you can come up with some solutions.
Right, and I think, sleep medicine clinics are probably going to have even more ideas.
Awesome. Okay, if someone has an egg retrieval scheduled in an upcoming month, will this diet benefit me with a limited timeline?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
So, I mean, we always say the sooner the better, but some people are waiting a long time. It's a continuous ongoing process. So you can get benefits from making changes almost immediately. You might feel better, more energetic, sleep better, things like that. Pretty quickly if you make some of these changes, and then as you build over time, it's just going to be a cumulative advantage, right?
Yeah, and something that we didn't mention, there's 2 chapters that we really love at the end of the book. And one, like talking about sleep, is when we talk about, what do we call them?
The boosters?
The boosters, sorry. Fertility boosters, we talk about sleep and stress and things like that.
Exercise.
And exercise and movement, which we cover how that can positively impact. But then we talk about the disruptors. So if I meet with a family, a couple or individual that their IVF is in 1 month, their retrieval, one of the things I bring up is the endocrine disruptors. So if they reduce their exposure to bisphenol A meaning don't put your plastics in the microwave. The half-life is like 48 hours. They can make a difference before that retrieval, right? And if they start changing out their laundry products and their skincare products just to go unscented, you can reduce the amount of phthalates that your body's exposed to now that 1 month before. You're not going to have those at the time of conception, and that's going to be helpful for your future child. So yes, I see a lot of people like, yeah, 3 weeks, I'm having a retrieval.
And
They
I
can
would
get benefits, right?
And I would say, I mean, that last month before
Yes,
the egg
it's the
retrieval
most
is the
important.
most critical.
It is.
So absolutely jump on it.
Yeah, jump on it. Get your Kindle, read it really quick, and it will help you out. Yeah, we
Yeah.
get to push a little bit of sales here right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, the next two, they're kind of like one. So,
Okay.
what is your favorite recipe that you've
Oh.
created? And then do you have any recommendations like for YouTube, cookbooks, resources online to find additional recipes?
What's your favorite recipe?
Well, so I love stir fry, and we have a wok. And so that's just so easy and quick, and you can do vegetables and you can make them simple or complex. So we have a recipe with tofu and cabbage with a stir fry, and it's just, those are two ingredients that people don't frequently cook with. So it's delicious, it's quick, it's
so good.
you know, packed with the cruciferous vegetables and the soy, and so that's my favorite.
Okay, we have so many, but I'm going to pull out one. I love this quinoa vegetable paella, and I have to admit, inspiration was my daughter, who's plant-based, pescatarian, and I won some. Remember, I won
you
a
did.
recipe contest with it. It has a lot of vegetables. It has quinoa. It has this delicious kind of Spanish flavor with a little bit of saffron. It's easy to make, and I just love it because I think it's kind of unique. But I'm very biased. I like all the recipes, and I've eaten them all many times with recipe tasting. And we tried to put the most popular recipes in too.
Right. And for resources, there's things like Old Ways.
Yeah,
right?
we love oldwayspt.org because they really look at like African cuisine, Mediterranean, South Asian. So they bring in a lot of the global flavors. And I'm a big fan of, I know, my lentils and beans, but lentils.org and USA Pulses, they are so creative what they do with lentils and beans, inexpensive. The USA Pulses is all about half a cup a day, like how do you work pulses in. And so many easy, quick ideas that those are some of my favorite ones.
Yeah, and we have there's other
in the
resources
books,
at the
we've
end.
listed some other sources in the book too.
Awesome. And I just dropped the link to your book in the chat as well, because
Oh, please do. Yes.
yes, of course. It's also on our registration site if the chat gets away.
Yeah, I think through the university bookstore, you're able to order it, and they have the major booksellers. It's in paperback, Kindle, and like I said, it's 7 hours if you want to listen to it, 7 hours and change. I was listening to it a little bit. So really accessible. And we will be doing, lights are going on and off. You can follow us on our Instagram accounts. I'm at Fertile Nutrition.
Yep, at Angela Thayer, MD. Yep.
And we will continue to post recipes, fun things about the books.
Right. We love hearing from people. So, you know, share your success with us, please. And hopefully you find some good creative ideas for yourself out of this and you have success.
Yeah, and let us know. I'm already hearing from people who have just got the book, and they're like, I made every single recipe. I want more. I love it. So we're starting to get some really good feedback. I already got good feedback from the healthcare professionals. I wanted to hear from the people, you know, reading it, and it's kind of really exciting. So of course, we would love if you rate and review us because your authentic reviews are really, really helpful to reach people.
Right, definitely. I mean, trying to write and publish a book, and I mean, this has been a labor of love for us. We love, it's our passion project. We love food. We love helping women get pregnant. We love providing this wonderful information to everybody. And so we just want to reach as many people as possible.
And we want to help our families continue to grow. A lot of our families who have one, they're like, we're ready for number 2 and number 3. So it's really exciting that they can still learn from what we're published, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know I've learned a lot. I can't wait to dig into some of the recipes and just thank you again for your time and sharing with the whole you, your awesome creation.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks so much.
Of course. All right. Thank you guys again. Everyone saying thank you in the chat.
Oh, good.